Okay, well, again, thank you for joining me on this workshop for CV to Resume for graduate students. Joining me today is also my colleague Julio, who will be helping me with filtering some of the questions you may have as I go through the presentation tonight. I will make some stops and just kind of check in to see if you have any questions and proceed as we get to answer those questions for you. And again, my name is Esther Lanier, and I'm a senior career advisor for doctoral and graduate students for the Career Engagement team at the Career Center. All right, so today you're joining me because you want to understand the overall role of the CV or your resume, how to assess yourself, and how do I convert my CV to a resume, how do I write effective content, and just an overview of sample positions and formatting and organization of your CV or resume. And also, I just want you to think in terms as we go through this presentation is that really the role of the CV or the resume is to showcase who you are and why an employer should care what you bring to the table according to the role that you are interested in applying. Definitely how you'll be able to serve them or impact their services. If it means in terms of like the bottom line, making them some revenue, that obviously is an option. Also, why hiring you would be such a great, step for the employer to take in considering who you are. And obviously, it's the point of always showcasing your relevant experience. So as I go through the presentation, you're going to hear me really just hone in on relevant experience, because your resume or CV needs to be focused to what you are looking to apply for and how you'll be benefiting that particular employer. So one thing I want to mention here in terms of CVs is that obviously as you look at CVs are going to be a longer history of your experience. And so although they may not necessarily need as much specification as a resume, you still want to make sure that you are making sense and tailoring your information to that particular role, whether it be in the academy or in industry, because there will be some industry positions where they might ask you for a CV. All right, so just briefly here, I wanted to just share with you just some nuances or what the CV is used for. So obviously we know that the audience definitely could be in the academics or for researching. It's obviously in the academic space for teaching or research, but obviously in industry as well, because there are research departments there too. It's very flexible when it comes to the length of it. It just depends how much experience you have. And so I've seen CVs that are a couple of pages, but either way, you want to make sure that the first couple of pages is what you are providing that's relevant to the position. Again, its goal is to present a full history of your academic credentials. This is where you really have leverage and freedom to mention as much as you want as far as what you've done academically that will be relevant to that opportunity. And so again, the focus is on representing your academic achievements and obviously your scholarly potential. So this here just kind of shows you some essential components. It's different for everyone. These are just some ideas in terms of what you may want to be able to supply through your particular CV, whether it be research, volunteer, or ways that you provide a service to the university, obviously your publications, any affiliations, experience in terms of professional or your teaching experience. And so again, that's some components of the CV. When it comes to the resume, it is a little bit more to the point, I would say. Obviously, the employer is the audience because they're the ones seeking to hire for a particular position. Therefore, the positions tend to be more in business and industry. We are looking at a one page, and I know that for some of you that have a long length of CVs, that putting them to a one page can seem like a scary. How do I do that? Again, remember that the resume is relevancy. So as you go through your CV, pick and choose what it is that's going to be relevant to that position. So I would say, the golden rule is one page, but if 2 pages what you feel like will definitely solidify what you bring to the table in that particular resume for that position, then that's fine. But 2 pages of really relevant information is really what you want to keep in mind. And it's also just to present a snapshot of your skills, whereas your CV is pretty much your historical information or experience. This is just let you know, employer, what it is I offer according to this position that you're recruiting for. And I want to communicate to you how I can help you in that particular role based on my experience. So again, represent your experiences that are job related, whether it be volunteer experiences. You pretty much make the resumes, categories, you could say, according to what you want to bring to the table. Obviously, some of the content in terms of it's a summary of your experiences, and that's obviously most important to the position. Again, skills and experiences related to the job. So remember, this is very specific. And again, they are always adapted to fit each particular position you're applying for. Now, you might be looking for, let's say, a data science or scientist or consulting type of opportunity, which positions are pretty much the same across different organizations. Even though the position is similar, you want to make sure that you create a resume according to its industry, if that's something you choose to do. And again, we don't list references on a resume. All right, so some key points to ask yourself. I know that the most easy way that we can go approach the job search is that I'm going to create one resume and I'm going to send it out to hundreds of different opportunities. And that's an approach, but you will probably find that doesn't get you much results. So therefore, you want to make sure that your resume is tailored. You want to ask yourself, what specific skills am I trying to highlight? When we look at the job description, it's very important to consider that sort of like the roadmap of what the employer is asking for. It gives you very important information that if it repeats, it's important. Therefore, that should be a skill that ought to be represented on your resume or your CV. And it's also important to think of, well, what qualities do I want to highlight that the job is requiring, right? So again, that's based on how you understand and really are able to understand what the position is asking for. A lot of times you have to sort of like reading between the lines of, well, what is this employer trying to get at? But again, most of the times employers will be very clear to the point as to what particular skill and experience they're looking for. How can I explain my experience in the most concise way possible? Yes, so again, this is where you want to leverage the use of bullet points, action verbs, and making those particular bullet points accomplishment driven. You don't want to provide just experience that's just showcasing a list of duties and sort of like left for the employer to understand what you're trying to figure that they should get about you. Remember that whatever you write on your resume, it's going to be taken at face value. The employer doesn't know you. They're not going to be reading in between the lines as to what you meant based on what your information is. So be very clear and concise as possible. You're always wanting to make sure that you're illustrating your brand. At the end of the day, you are bringing experience to an employer. You're choosing the specific phrases and words that demonstrate what you do, how you do it, and why it matters. So this is also important to consider as you are looking into exploring different industries. Also being in touch with employers, for example, attend Trojan Talks or different events that employers are very eager to engage with you. So you start understanding the language that they are illustrating in that particular industry. So when it comes to you branding yourself, you are putting yourself in the forefront of knowing that you can pretty much, be able to be a contributing member in that particular space. Okay, so skills that graduate students have, and this is where, if you're a master's degree student or a PhD, which I do hope that there are some in this call today. But again, think about yourself in terms of when you think of yourself as a student, you're looking at yourself that, yeah, you're adapt quickly, that you thrive in competitive environments. You're always working independently or in a team. You have that discipline. You can, think on your feet. Obviously, you can, write at different levels. So you may have various technical skills that you bring to the table. You can convey complex information into, to experts that are non-expert audiences. So think of yourself as to what you're bringing to a table as far as your academic abilities, but also if you have experience that you brought in prior to your particular graduate program. All right. So how do you translate your skill set? So when I think of transferable skills, it's the idea that you are bringing experiences or competencies from various different environments into your new interest of organization and opportunities. So it's really how you're able to convey that particular skill set to the employer. So here's an example of the ones that I just mentioned the prior slide to, well, how do I convince the employer what skills I have based on what they're asking for, right? So if I want to tell an employee, yep, I am definitely very competitive and I can thrive in very fast-paced environments, then you can, the keywords is the start to your message, to your story. So demonstrate or outperform. If you are in a position where you're leading a project or a team, you chair, you executed. So again, a lot of these keywords might also be part of that particular description that you are interested in. If not, I will definitely by the end of the presentation will give you a couple of resources where you can tap into additional action verbs. But again, being able to convey complex information. So you assess, you explored, you analyze, you investigated, you assessed. So all those different keywords is what really starts the message to translate your skill sets according to that position. All right, so after this slide, I'll just kind of stop a little bit and see if you have any questions. So if you have any questions, you can, by all means, please put them in the chat and we'll start addressing them for you. But as we look at what employers are looking for, so the National Association of Colleges and Employers does provide career readiness competencies that employers, are surveyed and are able to provide this information, to all different universities. And so communication, critical thinking, and teamwork are definitely on the top 3 that employers in general are looking for. And again, all of us have communication skills, critical thinking skills. We'll work in teams. I don't know how many people really just work by themselves. But at some point or another, we all work in a team. And so these are the skill sets that you might also find that through the various interactions with employers or descriptions of job descriptions that you read, you're probably going to be able to identify. And so it's key to keep these particular, skill sets or competencies in mind as you're also crafting your resume along with your cover letter too. So it also, they also share top 5 attributes that obviously employers seeking candidates on their resume: problem solving, ability to work in a team, have a strong work ethic, and analytical and quantitative skills and communication skills. So you can see some of those already repeat from the prior slide. And so again, they're giving you the attributes that the employers are looking for according to their standard. So if you want to get noticed, I definitely would suggest that you tonight take some time to look at your resume and see if your resume is presented in a way that your message is clear. I want to also just mention that your resume is not for audience of you. So for example, if your resume would be for audience of Esther or for Julio, then you're writing for 2 strangers, for example, to get what your experience is. So I find that this particular bullet formula is very helpful when it comes to putting those bullet points together. I've been saying the action verb is your skill. So that is obviously how you start your message. And you follow by, well, why am I saying that skill? What is the purpose? So the 2-part. So, and also, well, why am I saying this information? What is the outcome of this information that I'm saying? So you want to attach results or the impact that you've made. What value have you offered? And obviously when you quantify, you bring a lot more color into your picture, I would say. So if you can quantify, by all means, but if you can, it's totally fine as well. This is where if you were able to offer value because you implemented a program or a particular initiative that you were able to present, or if you, for example, were able to secure some funding, whatever it is that value you've offered based on the experience that you want to showcase, it's going to be beneficial for you to showcase it because you're showing the employer how good you are. You're not just telling them that you're good. Okay. So again, just want to focus on your results. Obviously, when we have an internship, whether it's paid or not, the employers really want, to leverage our expertise. And so therefore we're making a difference. We're making, we're being a value added into the organization based on the role that we are able to come in for. So again, mention specific initiatives if you have any that you want to mention, or the skills and tools you use to drive them, and obviously the results that you achieved. So obviously when we're thinking about industry versus the academy, obviously in the academy space, your reputation and notoriety is currency in the academy, whereas skills and results is the currency for non-academic job markets or industry. So you want to just keep in mind who your audience is as you are presenting the information. All right, no questions just yet. All right, thank you. All right, so in continue how to get noticed, right? So again, I've said that you want to list your bullet points and accomplishments. There are your praises, and sometimes we don't really give ourselves credit for that information or for that value we bring. So therefore, I just wanted to provide you sort of an inventory of questions you can ask yourself in terms of how, do I present, or what accomplishment have I been able to garnish so far, but maybe I'm not sure how to present it, or is this important? But remember that you are the person that's making a difference. And if you are not telling that on your resume, then the employer or anyone else that reads your resume is not going to get that message. So here are just some questions. I'm just going to pick, a couple of them from here. But again, what do you do, or what did I do that was above and beyond your normal job duties, right? I'm sure that most of you have some awards or accolades that you can, freely, praise yourself about. And obviously, did you solve any particular problems? And so, did I save the company money? What made me great at my job? And so not only will these help you to take an inventory of how good you are in reference to your resume, but also this is in preparation for the interview, because I guarantee you some related question might come in the space of why you are good. And therefore, being able to showcase your accomplishments is going to be very important. Again, you want to make sure you paint the picture with numbers. As I said, quantifying is going to be your friend. And so again, if you have, facts and figures and numbers to provide, by all means do. Because again, that is bringing a sense of, picture to the story. And so by quantifying your accomplishments, you're allowing the hiring manager, for them to picture the level of work or responsibility you need, that you needed to achieve the type of work you're referencing on your resume. And so add the benefit. So, how was it that, that was a benefit to the boss of the company? What impact did I make, right? And then again, throughout everything that I'm pretty much saying here today is pretty much show, just don't tell that you're good. All right. Okay, so here some basic resume formats. Okay, so I mentioned that the page length, get to the point onto a one page, and you want to make sure you utilize bullet points. Organization on your resume is pivotal. Okay, so you want to make sure that at least the top third of your page is really showcasing what that information is relevant to the position. Obviously, in terms of the font, as low as a 10 is going to be the best bet, and in your margins, half an inch. Sometimes I see that students just kind of stretch over the resume a little bit too much. You don't want to, have a resume where it feels like you didn't have enough, space to put everything that you wanted. Be selective. I think that's definitely what you want to think in terms of relevancy, as far as what experience is important that you want to show on your resume. I also wanted to just showcase here that you want to make sure that those bullet points are clear. And I would say an average of 4 to 5 bullet points would be a good length to provide, again, just based on what your experience is. And I'm not saying that every particular experience that you have has to have 4 to 5. You decide what that particular number will be according to what you want to highlight on that particular experience. Your resume too, just other things that I've seen in my time, seeing a variety of different resumes in that one page length. You just want to make sure that it's very clear. There are no pictures attached to that particular resume. You don't have to add borders or anything to that extent. I know that I've seen some creative resumes that have come through. Just remember the applicant tracking systems are not going to be able to read any particular image you put on a resume. And so therefore, just keeping it clean to content is going to be the best approach that you want to think about. All right, so these are just some general sections as far as your resume is concerned, okay? And I know that this can be a wide variety of different options for all of you. Your contact information, obviously now, if you just provide the city and the state and phone number, your email and your LinkedIn profile, or if you have a particular personal website you want to provide, that's great. That's as much as it takes. When it comes to the next two categories, your objective and qualifications, The objective, in my opinion, is not needed. Some students really want to use it, but in my opinion, it's not quite needed because the objective is for you to get that job. So the objectives that I've seen come through are those that particularly just talk about what you want to get out of the experience, and that's not what the employer is really all about. The objective is how can you help that particular employer? And usually when it comes to, students, you may or may not have, 5 years of experience coming out of college, for example. So you may not need that particular objective. The qualifications category as well. This is utilized a lot when applicants have a variety of different experience and you're trying to just summarize qualifications, for example, that relate to that position. So again, these 2 bullet points in or category sections here are not quite necessary if you don't have a lot to add into those 2 particular categories. Education as it is, definitely. Some key things that I've seen in this space is that depending as to where your education was, so you just put obviously, for example, USC, master's in XYZ, right? And just put your graduation date. You don't have to expect it May 2025. It's just May 2025. Also, when you put the location, for example, it's Los Angeles, California, and not Los Angeles, California, USA. So just make sure that you keep, some of those nuances and be aware of them. Your technical skills, obviously, whatever the employer is asking of you, relevancy is important too. That's why it's important that you consider having like your own website, because it's going to show a holistic picture of what you have to offer to the employer that a resume may not be able to capture, only because it's just the important information, the relevant information you want to provide. Obviously, in terms of academic projects, treat them like it's your job. It is your job, right? So think of your professors, they are your supervisors, they are your bosses, and therefore you are being able to provide what you do in those particular projects. So treat them in the same space. Tell your story. Use the bullet formula with your action verb, the reason why, and then what is the impact if there's any. Now, when it comes to publications and presentations, these are optional. Again, if you have those as part of your CV, it's fine. You always have to assess, is this information relevant to what I'm applying for? Okay. The rest of the categories, I think they're pretty self-explanatory, I would say, in terms of what you want to provide. And again, just wanted to reiterate, you don't provide a picture of yourself or provide personal information. And what I mean by that is don't provide any specific information as far as your date of birth, where you're from, any religious affiliation, nothing that has to do with how you can do a particular position. So there is a question in the chat, so let me just address it. Okay, so the question is, do you have any advice on how to manage one's LinkedIn page as a grad student? What do you think it's the way compared to the resume as such? So one great thing about the LinkedIn profiles is that, especially in that summary or about you area, you're really giving a story about yourself. And this is where you get to give yourself a voice. But a lot of times when you look at a resume, it's pretty much dry information, right? So the CV, the LinkedIn is really that space where you're going to make that take place for you. When it comes to the category of the experience, for example, I've seen so many different versions, but some particular profiles that I've seen, they get more personal, they get more on a narrative that they provide the information. Some are just able to, make it into bullet points like their resume. So the about section of the LinkedIn profile, really think about it in terms of it's your branding tool. If you wanted to know something about Esther right away, what would I give, wanted to share with you right away? So it's pretty much what drives me, where I've been, right? And what experiences I bring to that particular space. So think of it as kind of like your elevator pitch in a way. So, but you have the opportunity to make it more of a narrative. So I think that's one great way to showcase the employer, what you're all about besides the experience that you are writing on the resume that you provide. Okay. So are relevant coursework necessary for grad students? It all depends. So again, employers, when you're in school, right? So they're going to assume that you are taking classes. So therefore, it's not about you giving them a list of courses. I would instead probably suggest that you utilize those particular coursework and highlight projects that you have been able to, partake in those particular classes instead of just listing the classes. Now, being the know as to whom the employer is, obviously, because sometimes they will ask you, to showcase the classes as well. So this is where, as you engage with employers, you'll be able to know what nuances they have specifically for their industry. So that is something you want to be aware of. All right. So, okay, let's see. All right. So let me just continue here. I think. Let's continue here. So keep the questions coming. This is all about you. So I wanted to just showcase now that I have, a job description here that I was able to find to connect to see. It's a data analytics graduate internship program for Discover. And this is a job description. It's going to be about 3 slides. So it was pretty long. So just trying to figure out how do I, make this a little bit more short for you, but this is what it is. So anyhow, this is the approach that I would, suggest that you take as far as when you start analyzing the description, right? Really just get into the space of the employer. They start giving you a lot of information right off of, the job description. So everything that you see here in yellow is what was really captivating me as I was reading the description. So learning, looking for someone that is, people driven, right? Helping people. So help already tries, right? That they want to be part of their culture and obviously working teams and collaboration. And then they kind of get a lot more into the specifics, right? What the applicant can expect. So, pretty much support or drive these, discover strategic priorities, right? Work on complex and cross-functional projects as a team, interact with key stakeholders, lead projects, make decisions, problem solve, and think creatively. So all these things already are giving you a picture as to what this employer is really after. So as you are able to, dissect the description and make sense of it, it may not be in the first try. It might be second try that, okay, like now I really get what are some of the key things employers looking for. You would just want to make a mental note in terms of starting connecting your experience to what these particular requests of the employer are in terms of the job description. So it continues, and now it gets into what you'll do and how you'll do it, right? So then here, again, working with management. So collaboration has already been mentioned to the beginning part of this description. So solving business problems, so problem solving, right? Providing insights, creating reports. So the analytics kicks in a little bit more here. So, and then it gets into how you'll do it, develop analytic solutions. So you see they're already providing you a lot of those key verbs that they are wanting to present, right? Collaboration, cross-functional partners. That's already been repeated a couple of times. So obviously, when you look at data, it's not just keeping the data, it's also how you're going to be able to synthesize and present those findings and give strategic solutions to what the data is presenting. And so identify improvement opportunity or hypotheses, right? This is where your creativity comes in. Also, building more reporting. And then just kind of get to the basic qualifications. By this time, the employer is just giving you a laundry list of things, right? So, basic, your academic qualifications, and then it gets into preferred qualifications. Again, it goes into being able to translate ideas to clear priorities. So analytical skills, have a consultative approach. So then it gives you what are some of the particular technical skills you're looking for. So based off of that, this is what I wanted to present to you, is that now that you have pretty much in a view of what all this information the employer is asking for, I have to kind of summarize it. Well, how do I bring that to fruition, right? Well, I know they want curiosity. They want someone to work in cross-functional teams across different stakeholders. The analytical initiatives is huge. It definitely gives you a lot of information from the problem solving, from the creative reporting to the analytics, right? And then it definitely gets into your technical skills. So based off of that, you want to make sure that you are using the action-oriented statements. And so again, here's that formula I mentioned earlier. So here's an example. So if I want to say that I'm qualified for that particular position, but I just write on my resume, worked in a team to lead a revenue loss class project, or it could be any experience that you bring to the table. I mean, okay, worked in a team. Well, first of all, worked is not an action verb, right? And so at least you said a team, a revenue loss, class project. Okay, it doesn't give me enough information. So when you put your bullet points together, don't assume that the person is in your head as to what your message is. You got to make it clear. Okay, so that's not necessarily gonna give you, any leverage point to stand out. So what about this one? Collaborating a 6-member team to identify revenue loss for a Fortune 500 company by analyzing large sets of customer data, leading to the launch of a new product, forecasting $3 million revenue increase in the first year. So you might say, well, that's a lot of information, Esther. Well, from the first bullet point to the second one, which one gives you more insight as to what experience you bring to the table? Okay, well, in a team, it could have been party of 2, right? But you gave me party of 6, right? You told me why you collaborated, right? There was this particular problem, okay? And then what you did to solve that problem, and then what is the impact? Is that you pretty much provided, the opportunity to launch a new product that would bring in this much revenue in the first year. So as you think of your experience, think about why you're good. Show me why you're good. Don't just tell me that you worked on a class project. So give yourself the grace that you are skilled, that you have experience, and so you want to be able to showcase that to the employer. Now, just a caveat when you're writing these bullet points, I'm not asking for a dissertation per bullet point, okay? I'm not asking you to just kind of go on and never really get to the point. That's why the particular action-oriented statement formula here is to help you with that, so that you feel like you have an end to what you're saying. If you just feel like it's very general, which I've seen very general bullet points, then it's not, results oriented. It doesn't show an impact of what your experience is worthy of showcasing. Any questions here? All right, so just remember that bullet points are tailored to the job. They're quantitative in nature and result oriented. And again, if you don't have numbers to provide, obviously I provided a $sign here, obviously, right? But if you don't have that, I could have just said that led to, the launch of a new product that would, for the first year. If you don't have what that particular amount of dollars that will come into the organization because of that. So you always want to showcase, again, the why you're good. All right, so here, some takeaways, right? So you want to tailor. So that's something you want to get, right away. And so you want to think in terms of, well, how many resumes do I need to make? Well, think in terms of our industry and more or less about, again, industries will have very, very specific or sort of like more of a general type of skill sets that they might be looking for. So for example, if you're going to have a resume that's specific for consulting, make a consulting focused resume. You know that in consulting, for example, it's important that I showcase collaboration, client experience, analytical skills, team, that I am, results driven. And so those skills are transferable though, because even if you think about it, when you apply into another particular role, we'll work with people. We're always there to solve some particular problem. So again, they are just, translating your skills that will resonate with the employer in that particular industry, okay? All right, so again, keep, your resume tailored, specific audience, keep that in mind in a job description. A lot of times we get into very dense academic skill or information and experience that's not relevant to that position. And so you want to think in terms of how you want to leverage that academic experience to be transferable or translated into that particular role. Okay. And as I said earlier, the top 1/3 of the page is really where the employer is going to get your attention. So remember that the resume is not for you. The resume is for the audience of the employer. So always put on the employer hat so that you understand that this employer needs to get you in the first 30 seconds that they glance at your resume. And that's why using bullet points is very important, because no one's going to be reading no paragraph, per bullet point, okay? Or just, paragraph form type of information on your resume. Again, action verbs, you want to definitely utilize that as well, and keep the industry language, to make sure that, you're already showing to the employer that I really understand what your business is all about. So on everything on your CV and resume is for, again, whatever you write in there is because you want the employer to know. So don't be surprised about if they ask you something from the resume, you don't know how to answer any, the information you provided there. So, which brings me to the fact of, I know that ChatGPT will use it, so great. It's a tool. I think it's a great tool to really leverage, how you can reword some things on your resume. It's totally fine. Just, definitely make sure that it speaks about, reflects you, not just kind of just putting information because it sounds fancier or it just sounds like more glowing than what it really is. Because remember, you don't want to provide something that's overinflated, and then when the employer is asking you on that particular interview and you're like, well, that's not really what I did. So just keep your resume and your CV, as honest as possible. Again, keep your format clean, and use bullet points. Again, avoid typos, use Grammarly, use the tools that you have at your fingertips at your disposal to make sure that there's no silly mistakes on your resume, from extra spaces to just misspell words. Employers really just get very specific as to how you represent yourself via a resume. So make sure there's no simple mistakes on your resume. And again, I'm sure most of you have used VMark to get your resume polished. That's a great tool for you to utilize as well. I mean, you can definitely utilize, the career service available through us or through your particular college to help you, further with your resume. So just remember too that your work experience is more than just a list of what you did. Don't just tell me that you're good. By default, I will assume that you're good, right? It's your story. So tell me, why your story makes sense, why it makes a difference for me to consider you. Okay, there are 2 questions in here. Let's see what they are. So what are some thoughts and summaries or personal statements at the beginning of the CV resume? Okay, so like I said earlier, it's optional. In my opinion, the summaries can be utilized, if you have more than 5 years or close to 5 years of experience, because you need to summarize the experience that you bring to the table as it relates to that position. So it's not just, repeating verbatim what's on the body of the resume. It's summarizing it and connecting it to that particular position. Okay. This professional gaps need to be addressed. Not necessarily. I would just say that if that's something the employer will ask, they will do it during the interview process. And so that's not necessarily something that you need to make any particular reference via your cover letter, for example, or on your resume. Because obviously the resume at the end of the day is a historical document. So you'll be able, as an employer, you'll be able to see what happened there. So don't let that, stop you from applying to a position. All right, so most of you definitely know about applicant tracking systems. So again, I think that's where utilizing in the different tools are available to you are going to be very important. So definitely keep up with using the strong keywords or the phrases, experience that match that job. I mentioned ChatGPT. It's a tool. Use it, maximize it in ways that you'll find beneficial. Just as you might consider using ChatGPT to create your cover letter. Your cover letter is your person. Your cover letter is not a robot. And so remember that it's also your voice. So if you're tempted to also use ChatGPT, for example, to create your about you on LinkedIn, make it personal. Don't make it dry. Just give it a voice. Give it your take on it. You know what I mean? So it's not just about using fancy words on your profiles. Again, social media, we know that, keep it clean. I wanted to share with you these resources that I found that are very important. In my opinion, I use them when I meet with students all the time. But definitely 2 articles, for example, and these 2 other resources here when it comes to just a variety of different action verbs you can utilize, starting with the effective resumes and cover letters booklet that we have at the Career Center, to the Muse. If you haven't checked out the Muse, it's really cool. I would say it gives you plenty of information on job search topics and just gives you a lot of great tips as well. And then my personal formula for winning resume by Laszlo Bach, obviously, he provides a very great, thorough way that you can craft your resume to be accomplishment or, results driven. So, and then obviously, should you use ChatGPT for your resume? Sure, but again, use it with caution, right? All right, so CV or resume templates. Okay, so I know some of you ask for templates a lot, and it's okay if you want to use them, no problem. Just remember that when it comes to templates, they tend to restrict how much you can put on a page. Remember, a page is going to be your prime real estate, so you just want to make sure that it doesn't prevent you from adding valuable content only because the formatting of that particular template is, preventing you from doing that. So just, I just prefer a plain Word document, and here's one thing you want to be mindful of. So for example, applicant tracking system. So if you start your resume on a Word document, keep it on a Word document. Don't go from Word to Google Docs, for example, because there's behind the scenes formatting that takes place that you and I don't see, but the applicant tracking system picks it up. And so stick to one format, and obviously whichever format you utilize, turn it into a PDF, but avoid switching from Word doc to Google Doc and vice versa. Just stick to one or the other. All right, there's 2 questions in here. Yes, the recording will be available for sure. Okay, so the question about objectives and answers. So then when should it be included? It shouldn't be included, in my opinion, because remember, your objective is to get that opportunity, right? So if your objective say, seeking an internship in XYZ, as a data scientist, well, if you're already presenting your resume for that particular, type of role, then that's your objective. You don't have to specify it on the objective. In fact, the objective is just, you don't have to use it. So that's why I said it's optional, because remember, at the end of the day, all the information that I'm sharing with you is for you to decide how much it makes sense to what you want to present on your resume. These are, the tips and suggestions and the things that I've seen over the years that really help your resume stand out. And even as you read different resume articles, whichever source you're looking at, you always want to make sure that at the end of the day, you feel comfortable with what you put on paper because it's reflecting you. So for example, if let's say you go to the Career Center and there's 5 of us are giving you 5 different suggestions on your resume or CV. Well, it's 5 different set of eyes, you know what I mean? So at the end, just be comfortable that your resume will be representative of you as long as it makes sense to you. Okay, so it's not really to not give you the confidence that your resume is good to go. Like at some point you call the shot and it's your resume, and you will be able to defend what's on that piece of paper that reflects you. All right, so question here. Does transition from one role to another harm the screening process? For example, my previous role is SRE and I want to apply to SWE roles. I don't necessarily think so. The employer is always asking, how does this relate to the position? And it goes again to transferable skills. That's really what you want to get to at the bottom of the day, so make sure that it does make sense that you translate your experience, your language to that particular new role, right? Individuals, pretty much pivot from one industry to the next, different jobs as well. Okay, so my thoughts on VMAC, at which stage should it be used? It should be used now. One, because it will help you a lot with the basic formatting of your resume. It will definitely work on the content. A lot of the stuff that I've been mentioning here when it comes to the essence of the resume, when it comes to the bullet points, it's going to give you suggestions as to what, better action can describe what you're talking about. It's going to actually, present you with the opportunity with giving you information about quantifying the information or showing your accomplishment based on what you are presenting to the employer or on your resume. So yes, for sure, use it. Remember, you have 10 uses per year. And so it's a tool that you want to use. I mean, it's great. It's an AI tool that's available to you 24/7. Why not use it? So, and the deck of this presentation, yes, will be available to you. So stay tuned. I will be sending that out. And let's see. Do you have any consulting resume resources templates available? So yeah. So actually, when it comes to consulting, remember that It's not so much, what should it go on it. The content of a resume or the formatting of a resume, it's pretty simple across industries. The main thing with consulting, what you want to remember is that you want to speak the main, the language of the industry, that you are showcasing you can work with clients, that you can, work in teams, that you are results driven, that you have problem solving skills, that you have analytical skills and research. Those skills that I wouldn't worry so much about. Tell me the template that consulting needs to utilize. Now, we do have a resource on Connected C. It's called Management Consulted. And in fact, if you're interested in consulting case interviewing, on September 26th, we'll be having a case interview session. It's going to be about 2 hours or so, that will showcase how to prepare yourself for the case interview. And so if you go under Management Consulted on Connected C, for example, subscribe to this newsletter, because they always give you a lot of great content too. So that's really where you want to make sure you get a lot of the content and the most up-to-date information when it comes to consulting. All right, let's see what else I got for you here. Thank you for your questions. Okay, so this just leaves me with some of the different resources that we have online for you. Again, think of our resources from a general perspective. This is not always nothing for me in here. All of these resources are valuable to all students. When you look at VMOC or your next step, which is more of a career development tool that helps you with your value skills, it's great. Utilize it. Career shift, for example, you'll be able to identify not only positions, but you can also identify alumni that are, in XYZ organization. So you just go under contacts and you type in the USC name, and whichever company that you are wanting to seek, alumni in, is going to give you that. And the good thing about Career Shift, that it gives you the alumni contact information, or at least the company email, which a lot of students always want. So big interview, again, you will have to be preparing yourself for the interviews that will be coming up. So utilize that now. And it also has a great tool for salary negotiating. Remember, salary negotiating is a personal process. So embrace it and practice it, because it's a practice. You have to practice that, muscle and put it to work. Let's see what else here. So the connecting your scholarship or connecting my majors to careers is another great tool, as most of you hopefully are part of professional associations. That's another great way for you to tap in to networks, to opportunities that may not be funneled any other way. And so obviously, if you're a PhD student, we do have versatile PhD that will give you examples for PhD students that have gone into, for example, from history major, for example, or to consulting, or whatever other space of industry they're wanting to go into. It gives you a very thorough application process of what the applicant went through, from their CV to the job description to them crafting the the cover letter. So it's pretty cool information in there. So for sure, leverage it. And Imagine PhD is another great resource. It has a lot of professional development and just career development tools to help you too. If you are wanting to know more about specific industries, Vault, which is, was firsthand, and they kind of bought each other first, and now it's back to Vault. But anyhow, they're online career books. And so that's how you can learn about other industries too. Are there any other questions in there? Okay. All right, so these are just some events that are taking place. The fall semester is always very busy, so take advantage of it. And obviously coming up, we have a lot of, my gosh, we're already on September 6th, so see, a lot of events have gone by already. But, here are some, ones that are still standing. And so coming up is Mock Interview Night with alumni on September 26th. So time to practice your elevator pitch and just your interview in general. And again, the career fair is coming as well, so make sure you attend that. Obviously, Viterbi will also have their own career fair. And if you're a PhD student joining us today, we will be launching the marketing for the Beyond the PhD starting September 11th. So stay on the lookout for that. We'll be having a pre-conference meet and greet on the 5th and at the Career Center. And so hopefully you'll be able to join us for the conference either at the HSC campus or at UPC. Okay, this is a QR code for all our events that you can participate in. All right, there's a question. Yeah, so the link for management consulting, yes. So you want to pull that up, Julio? The link for management consulted, you can pull it up from the website. We'll send that your way. And what else is in here really quick? Yep, just follow us. All of our social media is just pumping with information. So plug into us. You know, obviously our Instagram is always giving you up-to-date information as to what's happening with the Career Center. All right, more questions. Okay. If I'm a master's student but already with a doctorate, can I go to the PhD and yes, you can. Why not? Totally. Just register once we have the registration available. And can I go back 2 slides? All right. So let me know if I'm there. This one, hopefully. Not sure if that's the one you want or this one. So let me know if that's what you're looking for. Yeah, but thank you for joining me tonight. I hope that this information has been of value to you. Again, you know, come to our Career Center and get your services, you know, and hope to see you. I think, you know, we're there to definitely support you from your career journey, not only while you're a student, but also afterwards as well. So let's see, there's more and more questions. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you again and have a great evening. And if you have any questions, you know, feel free to reach out to us at the Career Center. You can email us at careers at usc.edu. And all information in terms of event, it's on our website. So make your, you know, your way to our website and make connect to see your friend too, because everything that we talk about when we meet with you in person or virtually, it's all on Connect to See. So all right, just a reminder, this webinar will definitely be available to you, and I will definitely send you the slides too. Yeah, we do have meetings virtually as well, so that is something you can take advantage of. And great. So thank you again for joining us, and fight on, everybody. Let's see if there's more questions in there. Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Take care.